We'll call to order the regular October board meeting of the Madison Central School District. Mr. Brooks will record the members present or absent. We do have a quorum, and so we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I want you to stand and join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 5 is approve the agenda. I believe we have no changes, so I'd entertain a motion to approve that the agenda. Okay, Mrs. Sims has that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hanemichael. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Item number 6 is the consent agenda. Item number 7 is a part of the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of September 11th and the planning retreat of the 28th. And Mr. Nelson, Mr. Hanemichael, and I went through the bills, and I think everything appeared to be in order. On to number 9 there, Mr. Jorgensen.
Personnel actions, Mr. Halverson will be resigning from the elementary custodial position. Evidently it's that time of year, and moving to California sounded more nice. He's done a really nice job. We hate to see him go, but he made us aware of this a few months back. We knew this was going to happen. Playground age, you see a number of them listed there. Paige Elliser, Ashley Graham Hiller, Rockstein, Logan Peckinpah, Hunter Hazen, and they would be for recess time over to elementary. And then lane change, Mrs. Fink, from MA plus 15 to an MA plus 30, and that would be at $46,879.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the consent items. Okay, Mrs. Cecil. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schultz. Questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare the motion is passed. Looks like we have no one for hearing of delegation, so administrators report. Dr. Cooks was put on there. Mr. Jorgensen, do you have some items?
Just a couple items. Policy review, we've got some more that we are going through tonight. And then as I look back on the website, I believe we have 6 more that stay under review that we'll be bringing forward in the next 2 months to get those up to date, and then we'll start looking at other ones as we need to bring them forward. So you'll see some more again next month, and we'll try to get it so that all the policies are up to date on the website. The Little Red House, Little Red Schoolhouse Award that we got for the Makerspace program last year was contacted by SASD, and they've asked that we present out in Deadwood at the June Leadership Conference on the Makerspace program from that with a little Red Schoolhouse Award. So, and then there's I think it's $1,000 they'll give for to use in the classroom for presenting out there. So,
Wow.
and then we have started some discussions with DSU. Rob was involved in that as well, on a pilot program dealing with cybersecurity, possible module for the middle school and high school. Basically, and you can jump in here, Rob, if I'm saying anything wrong here, but basically over the summer we'll have a couple staff that'll take a week-long training, and there's another opportunity for another week or 2 that they can do some work on DSU campus as well. And then the intent would be it's a module that will add into both the middle school and the high school into our current computer programs that we have going on. So it's not necessarily a new class we're offering, it's just a new segment of that class that we'll offer to get to the kids. And the pilot schools that'll be involved right now, Madison, Sioux Falls, Flandreau, Brookings, Tri-Valley, Howard, and Harrisburg are the 7 pilot schools that are going to be working with DSU, assuming they all agree, I guess, as we move forward. So initial talks there, but like I say, I know that we have one for sure is on board, and I know that they were talking with the other teacher that we had that would be involved. So a good opportunity, and hopefully as we go down the road, we can build that into even something more that we could offer for another class in the high school down the road.
Anything else?
So, thanks, that's the main.
And we'll mention that Mitch and Mr. Shaw and Mr. Postma and Mr. Jorgensen and I had a chance to get a preview of what might be DSU facilities, athletic facilities. And that's all it is a preview at this point in time, but it will be interesting as that proceeds and as we make decisions as a district how we're going to be able to participate in that also. But so another one of our DSU relations items that we're working towards. Want to thank the folks that went to the regional meetings. Hopefully you felt that the time was worth it, and we got a couple items to deal from the regional meetings with on our agenda tonight. So attendance was down. We had what, 11 in Sioux Falls, I think is all, and in Vermillion we had 11 is all. So you folks that came to Brookings really filled the house with what, 20, if there was 23 by the time the evening was over up there. So on there. All right, anybody else, anything to report to the board? Mitch?
I just wanted to address a couple things real fast. The health insurance fund, we completed our year, and so if you saw in the report,
We are to the good.
we're to the good. We finished $11,755 to the positive. Our goal for the year was to finish 50,000 positive, so we're behind that, but we did finish in the positive, which it's been a couple years, so that was good. So our changes helped. And then the other thing I wanted to report on, we got a new online food service payment system, and we kind of did a new first as of last Friday. We brought in $70,600 in food service payments. 35,370 were online and 35,280 were in the office. So we've never done that before. We brought in more online than we have in the office.
Wow.
So that's kind of a neat thing. So we still have, it's a new system, so we still have things that we're working out with it, but for the most part it seems to be much more used than our prior one. And this is right from the beginning of school. So that was kind of a fun thing to report.
Good.
It is so much easier to use.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I've heard good things. Still a few glitches we've got to work on, but
The auto pay, everyone has
yeah,
that.
and that's, the state will update that. The state updates the whole system in January, so that's when that upgrade comes in.
Okay. Anybody else? Then Diana, you're up.
All right.
Thanks for volunteering to do this.
You're welcome.
I'm going to use a PowerPoint because it's just, it's how I work. It helps me to keep me on track. But what we want to look at today are just a couple of things. We know that our kids are tested every spring, but sometimes we don't know the reason they're tested so much. So we're going to understand what SPI, which is School Performance Index, stands for, how our district is graded. And also we're going to take a look at that data on a statewide. So how are our schools graded? The School Performance Index is a score out of 100. Every school gets graded. Madison Elementary, Madison Middle School, Madison High School, all get a score out of 100. And it's based on performance in various categories, and it's made public in early fall. And I'm going to take you to the Department of Ed website at the end here to show you where Madison is and other schools, and you'll get a chance to see where that is public. So elementary and middle school are scored differently than high school. The grades that are tested are grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11. So there's only one grade in high school that's tested, and that's grade 11. And then in elementary and middle school, it's 3 through 8. Every third grader, every fourth grader, all the way up. And in 3rd through 8, they're scored on student achievement, how well they do in math and ELA. They're scored on academic growth, which was new a couple of years ago, but it's how much they grow from where they were the year before. So it's a more indicative than just a score. It's, are you growing? Even if you're at a high level or if you're at a low level, are you making growth? And then attendance gets counted in the elementary and middle school. And I think attendance has been in there for so many years because it's easy to measure. It's something that's measurable and can be calculated. And then in high school, they're scored on student achievement, the same thing, the Smarter Balance Assessment, as 11th graders, how well they do in math and ELA. And then they get scored on high school completion, how many kids actually finish high school. So that's looking at the senior class. And then college and career readiness. That's your ACT, how well they're ready to go on to college. And career is the NCRC, which is the, it's a test that gives them a bronze medal or a bronze, silver, or gold medal for how well they are ready for career as opposed to college. So I want to explain a little bit about each one of these, just to give you a little bit more detail. And if I'm giving you too much detail, just tell me to quit and I'll quit. But the Smarter Balance Assessment, it's graded in, you kids either get a 1, which in Dakota Step terms was below basic, they get a 2, which is basic, they get a 3, which is proficient, or they get a 4, which is advanced. So they count, everybody gets a point if they're at a 3 or a 4. A proficient or advanced, they get a point for their school. So we're looking to see how kids do there. And we get points for gap groups and non-gap groups. They score, gap groups are kids who score historically lower, and they name them. They name gap groups as being our special education, our ELL, our Native American population, blacks, kids who have scored historically low. And they say, aren't you being a little bit of segregating these groups? And yeah, they are. They're segregating them out because they're historically low. And so they get scored twice. They get scored in the gap group and they get scored with everybody as everybody group. So they're weighted according to the size of the groups. Student achievement points are awarded based on your performance for up to 3 years. This is just telling us that it's multi-year proficiency, and this is a new thing within the last 3 years since we started Smarter Balance. But it's kind of like income averaging for farmers. If you're an income average, it's sometimes you have a really good year and sometimes you have a really poor year. Sometimes you get that really good class, and sometimes you have the class that comes through that scores historically lower. And so they take 3 years and they average the students for that 3-year average to get the actual proficiency score. The academic growth, this is new, and so this is a little bit harder to understand, but I want to show you through this chart because this is how I picture it and the best way for me to get it. And that is, if this is a 3rd grader initially in 3rd grade, this 3rd grader scored at a 280, this 3rd grader scored at a 220. When they go to 4th grade, they both end up at a 310. Okay? This is, we're talking about academic growth now. This student actually gets a higher ranking than this student because there was more growth. So academic growth measures their growth. And you can have a very high student, high proficient in the level 4, that's way up there toward the ceiling. If they start going down, they might not get an academic growth score. But they might get, they would get counted on achievement, but not academic growth. So academic growth looks at how much the child grew from the year before. So in academic growth, they get a point if they keep up, they're proficient and it looks like they're going to stay there. If they catch up, they're not proficient, but it looks like their trajectory is they're going to get there. Or if they're not proficient, they may never be proficient, but they scored very high growth, 75 percentile or higher in growth. So the only way they don't get a point for academic growth is if they're not proficient, and they're not going to be proficient, they're not on that trajectory that it looks like they're going to be, and if they're proficient, but it looks like they're going down to the point where they're going to be, eventually in 3 years, they may not be proficient. So that's a little bit of real fast way of academic growth, but that's for 3rd through 8th graders are scored on academic growth. I like this chart for those of you that have had children. It's like when you have kids, And this is when you go into the doctor and they're on, my kids were always on the short end of the growth chart. And the weight chart, so they were always here, but you want them to follow a certain trajectory. But if they all of a sudden have that spurt in height or weight, they get very high growth. More on academic growth. They take the lowest 25% of the students in the school. So it would be in the elementary, the middle school. They take the lowest 25% and those students are counted twice. They count them as the lowest 25%. They want you to get those kids high growth. And then they count them again in the overall. For high school, the indicator 2 is high school completer rate. And they can get a point if they graduate high school with their cohort, their 4-year cohort. Or they can get, if they obtain a diploma outside of that 4 years, or if they get a GED outside of that 4 years, or even within the 4 years. But that's points for the school. And then attendance is the third indicator for SPI. And for elementary and middle school, it's based on 94% of our students are here 94% of the time. That's how we get SPI points for that. It's a percentage of students who are at school 94% of the days they were enrolled in school. So if a student comes here from another town and they're here for 15 days, they're enrolled for 15 days, we count them as part of that, if they're here 94% of that 15 days even. And then for the high school, college and career readiness is their indicator 3. And that's their ACT cut scores if they get a 20 or an 18. Accuplacer, which is another test that they take, if they get a level 3 or 4 on Smarter Balance, and that's new this year. If they get proficient or advanced on Smarter Balance, they're counted as college ready. And then, or they can be career ready by taking the NCRC. And if a school chooses not to take that NCRC, all the points come from one of these. Okay. So, elementary and middle school, they get, for their 100 points, 40 points come from student achievement, 20 math, 20 ELA, 40 points come from academic growth, 20 math, 20 ELA, and 20 points come from attendance. For high school, 40 points come from student achievement, and that's the Smarter Balance assessment, 20 for math, 20 for ELA. 30 points come from high school completion, and 30 points come from college and career ready. So that's their 100 points. So how did Madison do? That's your question, right? I wanted to explain a little bit about all that. So if you want to go to this bit.ly link, it's bit.ly/ it's a capital MC. It's for Madison Central SPI 2017. That gives the information, and I'm going to show you the information too. So if you don't want to go to that site, you don't have to do that. But bit.ly, bit.ly/MCSPI 2017. Got it written down. Okay, the first one is the Madison Elementary, and their SPI total points out of 100 were 63.71. This is the side that tells you where it is. Academic growth was 53%, attendance was 85, just about 86%, and student achievement was 63%. And it tells you out of how many points they got out of the possible 40, 20, 40, how many points to get that percentage. As you scroll down, it details a little bit more about Madison Elementary. It tells you how many points came from the GAP group, how many points came from the non-GAP group to get that 25 points for student achievement. And it breaks it down even for ELA points as compared to math points. So for example, our GAP groups are historically lower. than our general population. And you can see that reflected in their scores. And then academic growth for Madison Elementary. And again, they could get 10 points for ELA, 10 points for math, and then the lowest quarter of the kids for ELA and the lowest quarter of the kids for math, for a total of 40 points possible. And you can see that ELA was higher in the growth than the math was, but not for the lowest quarter. The lowest quarter of kids, it was math did a little bit better on that. And then attendance, out of 20 points, Madison Elementary had 17 points for 85%. Then the middle school, they were a little lower than last year, but still pretty good for a middle school, 54.6% total, 39.5 academic growth, 91%, 92% attendance, and 51.25%. And I know one thing Cotton said last year, well, we can do something about attendance, you know, so he's really been stressing how important it is to be in school, to learn. You need to be in school, and it paid off for them to get higher in attendance. And the same breakdown, you can look at how they did there with student achievement, academic growth, and then college and career ready. And the high school, the 11th graders, last year's 11th graders would be this year's seniors, for student achievement, 49.42%. High school completion would have been last year's seniors, 96%, just about 97%. And then college and career readiness would have been last year's juniors, 78.5%. So they had a total of 72% SPI, so that's very high. And again, you can, if you want to look further at their breakdown, you can see gap versus non-gap. And this is would be high school completion. And then attendance, which they don't do attendance in high school. They do attendance, but they don't count attendance for SPI. It's college and career readiness for that. English readiness, math readiness, and career readiness. So English readiness, very high. Math readiness, and then career readiness. Any questions on that? I want to take you one more place before I'm done. And then so if you would go to doe.sd.gov, doe.sd.gov, that's the state's website. And if you scroll down just a little bit under the parents link, click on report card. And then I'm going to have you go down to about the middle of the page where it says 2016-17 School Performance Index scores, SPI scores. Mm-hmm. And you can go to this first one, SPI Expanded Public Excel or Basic Public Excel. One just has a little bit more information than the other. But that gives you, because this is public knowledge, it gives you every district in the state, every school in the state. So not just district, but school. So elementary, middle school, or junior high, high school. And then it tells, as you scroll down, it tells the elementary, it tells the school classification, which every one of our schools is progressing, which means if you're in the highest 5%, you're exemplary. If you're in the highest 10%, you are status school. If you're in the lowest 5%, you're called priority. And if you're in the lowest 10%, you're called a focus school. So everything in between is progressing. And Madison is progressing on all of those. But you can go down and see how they did. You can also see school performance index, and you can sort these columns by school performance index, or however you want to sort the spreadsheet, just to see. I don't know that they're supposed to be for comparison, but they're set up for comparison. This spreadsheet is set up so you can compare to other schools in the state and see how they're doing. But if you sort, for example, under school performance index, I did it, so now I've got all the priority schools first. I could have sorted descending, but you can, and you can also take schools out. You can take schools close to Madison's size, and you can do comparisons that way too. But Madison does very well. Any questions on that? What we did with the teachers was we looked at this SPI information, but we looked at it down to the student level. What students were giving us, what students were getting points for academic growth, which ones weren't, why weren't they? You know, what are we missing with some of that? Did you know that was there? Did you know the school report card was there?
The report card was there.
I know it was there, but I haven't really looked this closely, to be honest. Interesting.
This was something we talked about at our regional meetings.
Yeah,
We should have had board meeting first, then we'd have been really smart.
I
right?
know. That would have been great. Interesting.
Very understandable also,
Oh,
Diana,
thanks.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Without the preliminary, it would have been very difficult to try to understand. It really helped all of us, I think, understand how all of this fits together.
And I think it's hard for the state sometimes when the national government tells them that you have to have a way to rank your schools. I mean, this really is a way to rank the schools to see who's our lowest performing and our highest performing and things like that, to come up with actual numerical ways to rank schools.
Very good. Other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Item number 13 then is the second reading of proposed changes to policies. The first one is GCDB, criminal background checks.
And from the posted, what we posted, there's been a recommendation to make one change from what was posted. So that's in red. And basically it's just helping to identify early on what CHRI is. It's a criminal history record information. And if you'll scroll down, Steve, there again, the CJIS, the Criminal Justice Information System. And then on the posting for the second reading, I think it's page 4 or 5, I can't remember, the word copy was accidentally striken out and right there. And the word copy should have left in. The reason we have the electronic part not in there is because anything we have to do with electronic with this whole system, everything has to be encrypted. I don't know if any of the schools are even going to try to mess it right now because it's just, we're not set up like we need to be for it, and everything we do when we work with schools, we'll be either doing now with regular mail to get it to them. It's still a cumbersome policy. Every school in the state's trying to find one that's better. So, but again, in order for us to keep running our criminal background checks, which were required by law, we have to have the best that we can anyway, background policy in place. And if we find a better one in a month or two, then I'm going to bring it forward and we'll try to change it, condense it. But this will meet what we need to have so we can continue to run our background checks from the DCI standpoint, from the Federal Bureau standpoint. So, I don't know if there's any questions on it. I wish it was a smaller policy. But we tried to eliminate some of the redundancy, but for the most part, and we may have to come back and put some stuff back in, we'll see. I don't know. I hope not, but that's where we're at right now. So I would recommend that if we decide to adopt it, that we adopt it with the changes noted in red, which was different from the posting of the second reading.
So should we look at all three, and then if we choose, we can pull one out and discuss separately? And Steve, let's go on to EBCB, fire drills.
And the changes that were there from last month, no changes from what was shown. Again, we changed it just from the idea of, we have such short weeks to begin with, it gives us just a little more time to try and fit everything in to begin the school year.
And then the KK, visitors to schools, was simply a deletion because it was covered in other policies, so that one will be just a complete strikeout of the policy.
We adopted a different policy last month that was also visitors to the school, and we just added this into that one. So this information is still there, it's just now located in the one policy that says visitors to the school.
So with this being the second reading, we have the option then of adopting these policies. We could do a motion to either adopt all three, or we could do a motion to separate one. What would be the pleasure of the group?
And I would ask if you adopt all three, that with the understanding that the criminal background check has those just additional changes.
Changes with, we're in red. Want to do all three together?
Yes.
Okay. So I entertain a motion then that we accept would be the proper terminology, or approve.
We say, approve changes, or approve and adopt changes.
Okay. So the motion would be for an approval and an adoption of those three policies. So moved by Mrs. Sims. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by, was that Rob? Okay. Further questions or discussion on any of the three policies? Hearing none, all in favor of approval and acceptance signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Declare the motion is passed. Then we have some first readings. Video cameras on buses.
We're proposing that we strike this policy because it's covered in ECA, which is video surveillance, and it's also covered in ECA-R, which is video surveillance. This was in 1995. Some of the things have changed since 1995.
We just leave it at that.
There are certain things in there that aren't even legally we can't do anymore. I mean, it's just, we gotta change it. So it's covered, all these things are pretty much covered in those other two policies. It's an obsolete policy anymore. We need to not have it on it as one of our policies.
All right, questions on that, discussion? 22 to be precise. All right, EHABA, I almost feel like I'm getting my eyes checked when I,
Yeah.
the web page development policy.
And I met with Steve, and Steve dug into this. This same thing was 1998, was it, I think, or something?
Was the web even invented?
Yeah, I hope so. But at that time, and Rob would have the background of this too, we had to come up with our own, basically. Now we have to follow what the K-12 center has.
Yep.
So as we talked to Steve, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel and trying to strike out and just add words. So he went back, looked at the K-12, what's in place, and these are the things that we have to have in place in order to even use that service. So I don't know if there's anything that jumps out that you want to touch base on, Steve, or not?
Nope, just the fact that it was, old, and a lot of the stuff didn't pertain to us, because back then, we actually hosted our own website on our campus, and we no longer even do that, so we thought we better revamp it a little bit, so.
So we just ask you to look it over and read it, and any suggested changes, let us know, and we can bring that next month. But this should put us in line with where we should be versus again, something was a little bit obsolete.
So basically, that's striking what we had and replacing what the state recommendations.
Yeah.
All right, on to GCEA.
And on GCA, it's not so much changing, if you'll scroll down on that, Steve. But the information that you see, it's been changed a few times. Basically, anytime the classified agreement changes, chances are this changed, so you gotta make sure you go back and change it. Well, and the wording may not match up perfectly with what's in there, so if we would change that bottom part to just simply ask per classified agreement, because it's all found in there. So when you get to the end of the year and if the board makes changes on an agreement, it's already in place then, because we can reference that area versus a constant revolving of always trying to change the date on this type of thing. So the whole purpose of that was to make it so it's less cumbersome. It's not changing the policy, it's just making it so we're not gonna have to continually update it for no reason. That makes sense?
Good change. JCL, job control language. Oh, no. Different life.
The Wellness Committee met on this at the beginning of the school year and recommended some changes. You'll notice that what we had in place listed people instead of positions, well, listed them and their position, but a lot of them aren't even in our facility anymore. So that was changed basically just to list those positions, so that if staffing changes, it's not a deal of every year seeing if one person you're changed and having to go back and update the policy. There again, the changes are pretty minor. There was a recommendation, and we'll look at it as we move forward. I gotta find which page it's on here. When it talks about, if you go down, Steve, under a la carte,
We need to go down farther? Or did I?
up a little farther, right there. Whoops, right there. Where it says families are encouraged to assist their students with making proper food and beverage choices by monitoring the lunch account activity by calling the food service office to request the detailed. And great idea came up that we should probably put in there. Families are encouraged to make the proper choices, but by monitoring lunch account activity, by calling food service, or reviewing the account on their account online, because we now have it online. So I think we'll come back next month with some wording that'll actually check the account online. And the last thing that would say then would be call the food service area, because they have that ability now in front of them to access that. So we look at making that addition as we come into a second reading. Everything else on there is pretty cut and dry.
I guess one other question I have, if you go down just a little bit where it says other food sales. If I remember correctly, isn't there strawberry milk now at the elementary?
And at the high school too.
So,
Oh, under the first part.
yeah. Could we just say milk products?
I think that might be better because it
Flavored
changed
milk.
flavored, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll look at that, and if you see other things too that jump out in this, again, this was the Wellness Committee, and appreciate them taking the time to go through it, because this was, I think, 2006 was the last time we updated this one as well. So, questions on that?
What about under, okay, where the names were listed?
Yeah.
Below that, like Rob's old spot?
Is that the current makeup of the committee right now?
Right now, so yeah, so what it was, these are the ones that are on the committee right now.
Okay, so it is the same.
It's just not listing the people.
So it is computer teacher or high school health committee member, so the
Yeah.
computer teacher at the high school is also a health committee member? Is that?
They'll have someone, in other words, computer teacher, like before you had it, Rob was on there. That must be who they pulled together for the committee evidently.
Was that because of his expertise or because of his title, I wonder?
So the time that I remember this being is when we did the pep grant,
Yeah.
like Harold White pep grant, and I think I just was on it
Well, and you also, in your earlier life,
Yeah, that's when it worked out a lot. I think that's how I got on it. So.
I didn't want to
just-
bring that up
I
necessarily,
just didn't know if
Robert.
that was like the makeup of it, the committee, or like.
That's, in other words, what would happen moving forward, these would be folks that would be on the committee. I mean, we can always adjust it, and that was taken from what was in place, basically trying to
Yeah.
make it so the names weren't listed anymore.
But I wonder if like,
Does health committee member need to be after that though? That's what I'm wondering.
Right.
well, that was the position of that, right? So you have all the different, where
So
their
like-
position is at. and
Does
that's-
the computer teacher have to be the health committee member? Is that what you're kind of asking?
Right.
Yeah.
Or do we even like not list the makeup, because if you wanna have different people, then now you're stuck with like those people under.
Notes here, and
I certainly see like the health teacher, the exercise science, food service director.
Because if you notice, like, it actually has nothing for elementary on there.
Right, other than,
This PE teacher.
should have,
Oh, yeah, just
See those
PE
pictures?
teacher.
What if you just want to put high school staff member or something? And then instead of specifically high school principal, if that wouldn't just be a principal.
yeah, he'd smile.
Physical education is elementary representative.
Is that committee currently meet? Mike?
Yeah, there is a committee right now, so I'll double check on everybody listed, and we'll take a look at that.
And maybe get their recommendation of what their
Yeah.
membership should consist of.
But I do think having like the outside, like the exercise science from DSU is good.
Yep.
Yep, small set eyes don't hurt, so. So if you see other things on there, get in contact, and like I say, I'll do some looking on some of that too.
All right. Item number 15, Legislative Action Network representatives we could have. If anyone else would be interested, I'd be willing to volunteer again. Anybody else wish to be a part of that email to rally the troops? Okay, then I guess I would entertain a motion that Tom Farrell will be the Legislative Action Network representative.
so moved.
Okay, Lori's real quick to move, somebody want to second that quickly? All right, and Tammy second. You ready to get emails from me then? Further questions or discussions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Next, appoint an official delegate to the ASBSD Delegate Assembly. I cannot be our delegate. As being the first vice president, I am non-voting, so last year Charlie was our representative, he wasn't able to go, so really we didn't have another vote out there. I was present, but ended up, Todd Tolke wasn't able to be there either, so I stepped up to the role that he had. So we should technically have someone, it would involve an Friday afternoon in Pier. It's the Friday afternoon of the state volleyball tournament, if that affects anybody. And the volleyball tournament is in Rapid City, so.
It's a date. So,
19th, is that the Friday in November? 18th?
Yeah, something like that.
The 17th.
17th, is it? Okay. The delegate assembly begins at, I think, like 1 o'clock, and usually we're done by 4 or 4:30. Pier is beautiful in November. Last year it got snowed out and got moved to December, actually.
I've been before and it was really educational and really a lot of fun because a lot of the local fellows from other school boards will be there, so it's not like, it won't be entertaining. And Tom will be there.
Tom will be up front reading.
Yeah.
I would go if you think my short time on the board.
I think you'd be excellent, Laura.
I mean, I would welcome the opportunity to go, but I don't want to take from anybody who's been on the board much longer than I have, so.
What we'll do is we'll go through the policies that we went through at the regional meeting, plus then there's a set of standing positions, And in addition to that, then there's a rationale that we attach to each of those, so.
Okay.
I heard a volunteer.
I move.
All right, Mr. Nelson moves that Lori Schultz.
Should we put an alternate with it?
And and would someone be willing to be an alternate if Lori
Yeah.
could not go?
I'd be an alternate.
Okay, Sean, with Sean being our alternate, how does that sound?
Still moving.
All right.
Come on.
He's moving towards the gym right now. Is there a second then? Mr. Nelson has the move, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hanamichael. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the approval of Mrs. Schultz and Mr. Miller as our delegate and alternate signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. All right, final item is an executive proclamation of School Principals Month. State of South Dakota Officer of the Governor, whereas leadership is second only to classroom instruction among all related factors that contribute to what students learn at school through the vision, dedication, and determination of a principal. And whereas, you thought I could be wordy, principals set the academic tone for their schools and work collaboratively with teachers to develop and maintain high curriculum standards, develop mission statements and set performance goals and objectives for schools to achieve educational excellence. And whereas principals are expected to be educational visionaries, instructional leaders, assessment experts, disciplinarians, community builders, data and budget analysts, guardians of student and safety policy mandates, play a vital role in the successful implementation of Every Student Succeeds Act, and being entrusted with the education and development of young people's our most valuable resource. And whereas the South Dakota Association of Secondary School Principals and the South Dakota Association of Elementary School Principals honor such exemplary public, private, and independent school leaders committing to serving students from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 in their profession and providing high-quality learning opportunities for students as well as their exemplary contributions to the profession. And whereas to honor and recognize the contributions of all school principals and assistant principals at all grade levels to the success of students in South Dakota elementary and secondary schools, and to encourage residents of South Dakota to observe Schools Principals Month with appropriate ceremonies and activities to promote awareness of the school's leadership role in ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. Now, therefore, I, Dennis Dugard, Governor of the State of South Dakota, do hereby proclaim October 2017 is School Principals Month in South Dakota, and witnessed by Chantel Krebs on the 12th day of September. So, thank you, principals of our district and all across the state for the work that they do. Item number 18, Steve.
So moved.
Mr. Nelson moves that we adjourn. Is there a second? Well, Steve, it's dying for lack of a second. We're not adjourned.
Oh, come on.
I feel like I just got here.
Is that a second then, Sean?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We didn't seem to worry him when we didn't have a second, did we? His mind was made up.